If you would follow my advice, you would fare better. The place that you pass to, men perilous hold it. The worst wight in the world, in that waste dwelleth. For he is stout and stern, and to strike he delights. And he mightier than any man upon middle earth is. And his body is bigger than the 4 best men that are in Arthur's house, either Hester or others. All goes as he chooses at the Green Chapel. No one passes by that place so proud in his arms that he hews not to death by dint of his hand, for he is a man monstrous, and mercy he knows not. For it be a churl or a chaplain that by the chapel rideth, a monk or a mass priest or any man besides, he would as soon have him slain as himself go alive. And so I say to you, as sure as you sit in your saddle, if you come there, you'll be killed. And if the carle has his way, trust me, that is true, though you had 20 lives to yield. He here has swelt now long, and stirred much strife on field. Against his stroke so strong, yourself you cannot shield.
Hello, and welcome back to the Lit to Lens podcast, a safe place for folks who like the book better than the movie and vice versa. We are recording this on Sunday, August 8th, 2021. Today we are discussing The Green Knight. With me to talk about the adaptation is the Ginger Knight himself, Mr. Eric. Say hello to the people. E.
Hello. I like being the Ginger Knight. It kind of reminds me of that guy from Game of Thrones who just had like amazing red hair and was one of the wildlings.
Yes, he was
great.
great.
His name, but
yeah.
That's sort of like what I would aspire to.
Yeah, you should. There's still time.
There's still time.
Yeah.
That guy,
he's great.
He's the Ginger Knight.
He is. Well, yeah. You can dismount him. Maybe one day.
Yeah, I probably have to like kill him to assume the title of the Ginger Knight. Definitely. That's how these sort of things work, right?
Maybe you should
like someone has the crown. Yeah, a beheading. You know, a little foreshadowing there. We took a bit of a summer break.
Yes, we did.
And now we're back. It's sort of like the school year was over. We had to recharge our batteries by traveling a little bit since the world was open for a moment. And
and it might be closing pretty soon.
So we delighted in the pleasures of this bountiful earth, and now we are back in my basement recording.
Yeah, well, I think we all needed it. I'm sure many listeners are probably taking advantage of the same things this summer. Getting out, getting outside, getting away from the quarantine. Maybe going to a bar, maybe going to a restaurant, wherever it is.
Or a movie theater.
Yeah, or a movie theater.
Like us.
Now open, so.
On Thursday last, where we watched The Green Knight.
Shout out AMC Georgetown.
Yeah. That was my second movie back. Have you seen any other?
That was my first one back, and I went to a movie last night at Sun Cinema in Mount Pleasant in DC. I got to see Memories of Murder by Bong Joon-ho, which is very good. Recommend it. Nice. But yes, that was my first one back since I was with you when we saw
Invisible Man.
Yeah. That was March 2020. Or February maybe.
February maybe? Yeah. It's been a minute. I would say our experience at this last movie was kind of how I remember it.
Yeah.
Except for we had all those like little Landon high school kids right next to us. And it was like no manners, no like they would get up, move around on their phones.
You were right next to them.
Yeah, they would like reach into their like little candy and just rattle it around like it was a baby toy.
Well, first off, when we got there when the trailers were going, and they were in our seats.
Yeah.
And where did they go? Were they sitting on each other's laps?
They did until the movie started, and then those two kids who were in our seats moved to the front row.
Oh, okay.
And watched it from like all the way
in the front,
necks up.
Oh, that's horrible. Yeah. Well, don't take our seats.
You know, it's also a COVID world, man. You can't just like sit in someone's seat and then leave.
Yeah, well, they did.
Right? So I guess,
Maybe we have the Delta, but at least we did it
We're
together.
doing this for you, audience.
But yeah, if you have a chance to get to the movie theaters, go support them. They have been struggling for the past year and a half, so go do that. But wear a mask.
Yeah.
So
all right, Will, hit us with the fast facts.
Fast facts. The poem called Sir Gawain and the Green Knight is actually written by an unknown author. There's no record of who wrote the poem, but sometimes referred to as the Pearl Poet. But it was written in the late 14th century, so goodness gracious, a long time ago.
Yeah, 800 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the movie was written and directed by David Lowery, who is famous for The Old Man and the Gun, A Ghost Story, Pete's Dragon, and Ain't Them Bodies Saints. The Old Man and the Gun, I think, was Robert Redford's final film, right?
Yep. For now.
For now, yeah.
You could make a comeback. You never know.
He's going to unretire.
Old Bob Redford. Who knows what he's up to?
Michael Jordan. And the movie stars Dev Patel, Alicia Vikander, Joel Edgerton, Sarita Chowdhury, Sean Harris, Ralph Ineson, Katie Dickey, and Barry Keoghan?
Yeah.
Okay. And then Rotten Tomatoes 88, Metacritic 85. So well received by critics.
Yeah, pretty high, I would say.
Yeah. Give us a quick recap.
I'm going to recap the poem here. Sir Gawain and the Green Knight tells the story of Sir Gawain, a knight of the Arthurian Round Table who accepts a challenge from the mysterious Green Knight. The Green Knight insists on playing a game. Someone is to strike him once with his axe on the condition that the Green Knight may return the blow in a year and 1 day. Sir Gawain beheads the Green Knight, who subsequently gathers his head and rides off. 1 year later, Gawain quests to find the Green Knight to accept the return blow. Chivalry, loyalty, and honesty feature prominently.
Yes, I do. That's a good little recap.
Yeah.
So, before we get into the poem here, we have Two Truths, One Lie, a favorite game of our listeners and us as well. I assume you know how to play, but I'm going to ask anyways. Do you know how to play?
Yes. What we need to do here is just have you say Two Truths, One Lie, a game that is played like this.
No, I think what we're doing is perfect.
Okay.
I think we should continue.
I do like to explain it. 3 statements, 2 of them will be truths, 1 of them will be an inaccurate statement.
Correct. Number 1, Joel Edgerton played Gawain in Antoine Fuqua's King Arthur in 2004, which starred Clive Owen and Keira Knightley. Number 2, the actor who portrayed the Green Knight, Ralph Ineson, also appeared as Amicus Caro in 2 Harry Potter films. And number 3, the actors of the King and Queen appear in another film together by Ridley Scott, one of my personal favorites, called Prometheus. Eric, what do you think?
I hate this. I feel like you just put this Prometheus line in here because you knew I wouldn't remember who was in Prometheus.
Of course.
Because it's a hack of a movie. All I can remember about that movie is Michael Fassbender, like, riding a bicycle around a basketball court.
Great scene.
The only scene, as far as I'm concerned. So, can't be sure. Those actors seem a bit older. So, I don't know if they might have been in that movie. I wouldn't remember. Prometheus, Charlize Theron, maybe is it like one of the leads?
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
So, I was a bit busy watching that movie. The actor who portrayed the Green Knight was also in Harry Potter, possible. Joel Edgerton played Gawain in King Arthur. I feel like Gawain is famous because of this story, and it like vaulted him up the ranks of the Arthurian like Knights of the Round Table. So like Lancelot, and like Gawain is famous because of this story. So I'm gonna say that's true. I'm gonna say Gawain got some love there. I have not seen that movie.
What? You haven't seen King Arthur?
I have not.
Clive Owen? It's classic.
Yes, I have not.
For me, at least.
I've not seen that movie. I have no idea about Amicus Caro is trash. I guess once we do Harry Potter 7, we'll figure this out.
Yeah, in 7 years' time.
Yeah. So really, this is just a guess for me from the final 2 lines here. I'm gonna say that I'm gonna say the third one is a lie. I'm gonna say the King and Queen did not appear. Well, here's the rub here, Will. The actors of the King and Queen appear in another film together by Ridley Scott. Oh, actually,
what's the rub?
I read that wrong.
Yeah.
Never mind. I'm gonna say that's a lie, though. I'm gonna say they did not appear in Prometheus.
I don't do rubs.
I actually, that's later in this movie. I thought this was written as appear in another like good film by Ridley Scott, and then that was.
You're right. That would be inaccurate. It is a great film.
Yeah.
So
I'm gonna say that's the lie. They did not appear together in Prometheus.
you are wrong.
Oh, okay.
Incorrect. They did appear together in Prometheus. I actually had to look it up because I did not remember. I remembered him. I did not remember her. She was like a nurse in a very brief scene. But he played a more prominent role.
So you're going to tell me that the Green Knight actor played the other Caro brother in Harry Potter?
No.
Okay.
He did play Amicus Caro, but it was in 3 Harry Potter films.
So Harry Potter 6 and then Harry Potter 7, Part 1 and Part 2.
Correct.
You son of a bitch.
Apparently I do give rubs, so. But yeah, so congratulations, or I guess better luck next time.
And so when you watched King Arthur, did you have a concept of Gawain?
No, that surprised me. But when I saw the image on Google Images, I was like, oh yeah, I'm brought back to it. Because I remember Lancelot prominently featured in that movie, but I don't remember Gawain like doing much. But I remember him being there after looking at the image of it.
It's probably before he slayed the Green Knight. It was like he was just there on the round table.
Yeah,
he wasn't like a senior member yet.
Well, it's still at his head, so.
Yeah.
So, which was interesting because I mean, the first movie I remember of Joel Edgerton was that Warrior movie with Tom Hardy.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that was after, right? That was that late high school?
That was, yeah, we might have been in college. That might have been 2011, 2010. Yeah,
but I guess, he had to work his way up to that, so. Yeah. That was
He's been around for a while.
Yeah, interesting. But yeah, so better luck next time.
I think I'm over my last like 3 or 4. I'm on a bit of a cold streak here.
I think it's more than that, but yeah, like maybe 10.
I don't know about that.
We're gonna take a quick break. We'll be right back.
If you like what you're hearing, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It'll help us find more fine listeners like you.
And we are back. Thank you from that brief word from Eric. So we are going to talk about the poem. The version that we read was the J.R.R. Tolkien sort of adaptation of the original text.
Translation.
Yeah. Which still had a lot of like medieval English in it, I would say, but was relatively understandable.
Yeah.
It wasn't too difficult to sort of get through it.
It was like, I don't know if you've read one of those Shakespeare readers before, where it's like one page is the Shakespeare text, and on the other page they've translated it into like 2004 English.
Oh, no.
It wasn't exactly as like modern as that might be, but they did helpfully have like definitions for some words that weren't like didn't have a better translation.
Yeah.
Well, I guess they would have, but maybe it worked like better for like the style of the poem.
Yeah, and especially if they want to do like to keep up the alliteration aspect of it. Like I remember one part they had a bunch of different translations or definitions for like the breastplate was called something, and like the knee armor and the shin armor
all had names.
Yeah. So that I'd never heard of before. But anyways, it's about 60 pages PDF. It's online if you guys want to ever check it out. Just type in J.R.R. Tolkien, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and it'll come up in Google. 101 stanzas that are 14 lines each, right?
14, so 19 lines, 14 of which are written in pentameter, and then the final 5 are written in something called a Bobbin Wheel construction.
Which we're going to get into a little bit later.
We'll talk about that later.
So, Eric, why adapt something like this, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, into a cinematic form?
It's an interesting question because this is something that's not like shaking your lapels to get made as a movie, because the poem itself is pretty like extra textual. Like the plot itself is, a Green Knight comes to Camelot to the Round Table and says, "Hey, let's play a beheading game, and in a year, come find me." I'm not even going to tell you where the Green Chapel is. Literally, just come find me,
right?
And I'll like give you the like axe blow that you dealt me.
Talk about ambiguity.
Yeah, and during that trip, there's like one diversion to a lord and lady's castle, basically, but like really the plot is pretty thin. There's just a lot of like metaphor, a lot of like ideas around what a knight is and should be, and how that like models against the civilization that the knight exists within. So it's more of like a parable about like what it means to be a good lordly person, I suppose, rather than what a King Arthur movie might look like in 2004, where it's just like we're swinging swords.
Fuck yeah.
I haven't seen that movie, but I can just like see the
Definitely.
trailer where it's like King Arthur's riding into battle, being like, Lancelot, let's get this shit.
And then he hooks up with Keira Knightley, obviously. She's got sex in there.
This poem is much slower, and I think it's much more concerned with elements that aren't like swinging swords and swooning honeys.
Too bad.
Yeah, so I think for me it is sort of interesting to tell it now in a like time in this country where we've sort of like fallen into factions and there is no like central force that keeps us all together as humans. Like this story sort of exists to maybe show us how to be a better person in the world, or at least like try to live up to our views of ourself in a certain sense. So in that sense, it might be more of like a morality or a like didactic version of what like the world could be like.
Yeah, I think that's a good perspective on it. I definitely agree with that. And it's funny too, because today there are not very many medieval films, right?
Yeah.
Like I can't even tell you what the last one was that came out. But
there was that King Arthur movie with what's his face?
Charlie Hunnam. Yeah, that was like that was
a Guy Ritchie joint, so that's probably like exactly what I'm talking about, like a violent, crusading movie.
Yeah, like a rock and roll sort of version of the medieval story.
This movie is definitely not rock and roll. This movie is like beautiful.
Yeah,
it's sort of like a portrait, like a painting.
Yeah, like a Mozart orchestra.
Yeah.
Orchestral.
Yeah.
Whatever. I don't even know what it's called.
So for me, I think you make it because it has something to say that might be like lacking in society right now.
Yeah.
And also it's kind of good IP. Like people know King Arthur.
Yeah.
I suppose if we're going to be like cynical and talk about the business side of it.
Right.
Like, and also this is a free story. I don't have to buy the rights to any Arthurian tales.
Interesting point.
It's on the public domain.
Oh, interesting.
So I'm gonna grab it. I'm gonna do what I want with it, basically.
Right. And plus the author is unknown, so you couldn't even give royalties to like their family or something. Not that you'd find them 700 years later, but
yeah, I thought that was interesting that they were also known as the Pearl Poet. Like they are definitely anonymous, but they think they've like identified other works by that person. So they're just like, oh, okay,
it's this guy.
These might be the same thing. Yeah. So that's my thought on the adaptation.
And then, so what parts of the poem were you excited to see adapted?
I think for me, it goes to the Green Knight. Like the Green Knight is dope. It's like Darth Vader mixed with Boba Fett for my like modern audiences. Like somebody who is super powerful, but is also just super cool looking and has a certain vibe. He's like, I'm coming into the round table, the best knights in all the fucking land, and I'm telling you, don't fight me. I'll fuck you up.
Right.
Instead, we're going to play a game where I'm going to let you cut off my head, and it's not going to hurt me.
Yeah.
And then in a year, I'm going to cut your head off.
Right.
That's it.
That's badass.
That's just, he walks into, like, the most accomplished place in all the realm, and is just like, I'm better than all of you.
Right.
Someone step up.
Right.
Step up. Step at me. And he just comes in there, like throwing 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Swinging heat.
And Dev Patel says, all right, I'll do it.
So I wanted to see what he looked like. I think the idea of a Green Knight is kind of cool.
Yeah. I had the same note, the visuals of the Green Knight.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else?
I think how they modernized the story. I was telling you this off mic, but I told my wife what we were watching, and she was like, oh, what's that about? And I tried to explain the beheading game, and she was like, why do they, what? Like, why do they just, like, cut each other's heads off? And I was like, oh, you kind of just had to be there.
Yeah.
It's just like that's just what we did, you know,
as
knights in the Middle Ages.
Yeah.
So, I don't think they could have done that. I think they'd have to modernize the story. So I was interested to see what sort of modernization they writ upon this movie.
I had a similar note. It's sort of like, I just couldn't really visualize how they would do a good literal adaptation of it. It wouldn't be like you said, it wouldn't be modern. It wouldn't sort of relate to a modern audience in any real tangible way, I think.
And it would be a little too small, just like
short.
Yeah.
So same thing. I wanted to see what they changed in that respect. And then anything else? Or are those the main things? And then did we like reading the poem?
I'll be interested to hear your take. I think this is probably the oldest thing we've read for this podcast.
Definitely.
And probably one of the oldest things that we've read in our like personal lives, just generally. It's an epic poem. Yeah, like you mentioned, it's 101 stanzas. It's not like short. It's also not, or it's not long, but it's also not short. The Tolkien version we read, I think was approachable. Like, I think we probably agree that it was challenging, but it also was like, if you gave it time and energy, you could do it.
Yeah.
This is not like something you could pick up and like put down a bunch and feel confident that you know what's going on. Right. But if you like engage with the text, I think it was fine. That said, there was like, there's some stuff in here that's just sort of hard to parse. Yes, I wrote down some lines. A hack I thee vowed, and thou'st had it, so hold thee content.
Yeah, like what the fuck is that?
The fifth five that was used, as I find by this night, was free giving and friendliness first before all, and chastity and chivalry ever changeless and straight, and piety surpassing all points. These perfect five were hapsed upon him harder than on any man else.
Wait, so you're telling me you don't understand that?
So it's just, I think you mentioned it, like, this story is written in alliterative verse. Yeah. All these lines play with the same, like, first consonant sound over and over and over again. And it is, like, it is what it is. Mm-hmm. You just sort of have to, like, roll with it like that. So for me, like, getting accustomed to that took some time, but I think once I got it, I flew through it a little bit.
Yeah.
It was slower, but it was accessible. I could follow it without too much trouble. And I actually quite enjoyed the story. There's some elements in there. There's a twist. There's just some good like textual writing where they, evoke what the Green Knight looks like or what some of the like wooded areas look like that I enjoyed.
Yeah. I kind of agree with that. I enjoyed it a little bit, I would say. More than I thought I was going to. I was very much dreading starting to read it, especially when we were first researching it. I've just never been a fan of Old English, medieval English, especially reading it. Never was a fan of Shakespeare. Like, hated his guts.
What?
Hated him. And, yeah, but I will say, like you said, once you sort of understand that you sort of need to give more effort and the concentration and let sort of the text marinate for a bit as you're reading through it and just take it a little bit more slowly, at least for me, then it sort of is more rewarding as you read on. It's like, okay, now I get it. I'm there. And it's just more rewarding, I guess. So I actually did enjoy it, and I enjoyed the rhythm of the story. Like, reading it in sort of this rhythmic pattern was more enjoyable than I thought because I don't do that often.
Yeah. You got the story, but you also got, like, cool way of telling it or a different way of telling it depending on how you feel about it. There's more to grasp onto than just like some old English text. I don't know if you actually looked up what Sir Gawain looked like not translated into like modern English from some of these like translators. It's like fully on old English. You couldn't read it without a degree, I don't think.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Yeah, no thanks.
It's some like when I was in college we read like Beowulf has modern translations, and it's about probably a little bit less accessible than this. But we would read some like Chaucer, some of like the Canterbury Tales, and that stuff was like you just needed a dictionary.
Yeah,
you needed the Shakespeare reader basically to be like, here's what all these words actually mean.
Just stop every few words and look it up, and then read a few more words to look up the next word.
Yeah.
So I would never have the patience for something like that.
Yeah. It's just like a way of life. You know what I mean? Like, it's cool that something is written in a different language. That's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what the language was.
Right.
But it's not like, I don't need to translate that. I want you to translate that for me. I don't need to read it in like the original.
Yeah, I mean, we're millennials.
Old
like,
English.
Come on, we're not doing that shit.
Yeah, I could barely read it, I read it on my phone.
Yeah, right. Well, cool. So yeah, if you guys are interested in doing that, like I said before, Google it. J.R.R. Tolkien, the guy who wrote the Lord of the Rings
You might have
series.
heard of him.
Yeah, probably. He did the translation for this, so it's online. We could even post it to Twitter, the link to it, but I'm sure it'll be easy for you to Google.
Yeah, and there's a few translations, but I think him and there's another translator who's whose translations are the most famous of this poem.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's it for the poem. We are going to talk about the movie in a bit, but next coming up, Eric is going to learn you something. Before that, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back. Do you have an idea for an episode? Tell us what it is. Tweet at us, find us on Instagram, follow us for updates and general musings at Lit2Lens. And we are back. Thank you from that brief word from me. You are welcome. So, in lieu of jokes, because we were both sort of, joked out, we have a new segment called Eric Learns You Something. So, in it, he's going to teach you about something, and, you're going to enjoy it, and you're going to remember it forever. And you're going to thank Eric later on for when you use it. So, Eric, the floor is yours.
Yeah, when you go to the bar and you just drop the word alliteration, it's going to impress all of your colleagues and clients, and they're going to be, wow, you know what alliteration is?
Yeah.
So one of the things about reading this poem is that there is a structure called the Bobbin Wheel. A bob is a short line, often 2 syllables, that serves to introduce the start of the wheel. So it's sort of like a part of the wheel itself.
It's a little precursor.
Yes. The wheel occurs at the end of a stanza and gives the text a particular rhythm. So in Sir Gawain, stanzas are written, like we mentioned, in alliterative verse with 14 lines using pentameter rhythm. So that's just like 10. So, the final 5 lines in each stanza are said to be the bob, which is the 1 line, 2 syllable 1-liner, and wheel, which is 4 lines. And those wheels typically follow an AB rhyme scheme. So the first line rhymes with the 3rd line, second line rhymes with the 4th line. And the content of each bob and wheel varies within the poem, but often it functions as a refrain, summary, or a counterpoint to the stanza that preceded it. So you can view it as sort of like a underscoring of the important parts that were just covered. Just a quick summary of like, okay, and he rode off into the sunset of what was happening, or sort of a flip of what we read. So it's a way to like emphasize the thing that came before it, and it's just a sort of particular way of doing so.
Interesting. So it is sort of like a summary of what just happened, just in a shorter or smaller portion.
Yeah, and I think giving it that like rhyme scheme after reading those like alliterative verses is punchier, because if you notice, like, there's no rhyme throughout the stanza until you get to the end, and then it's like do 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 do, and it's sort of like a way to be like,
this is about to wrap up.
Yeah.
On to the next one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So popularized mainly by this Pearl poet. I think it's been in other poems throughout time, but really like Sir Gawain is the bob and wheel example.
Oh, really?
Throughout time.
Oh, interesting.
So that's bob and wheel. The other thing to hit on real quick is alliteration, and that is just the occurrence of the same letter or sound at the beginning of adjacent or closely connected words. It's the opposite of assonance, which is that, but just for vowel sounds. So a couple of examples I pulled. You can listen to the beginning of this episode to get a sense of it and some of the other things that we've read from the poem. But there's a line, these dined on the days and daintily fared, or when there passed through the portals a perilous horseman.
It's a mouthful. It's a mouthful.
It is a mouthful. So that's why you can hear my lisp coming out, because I'm just trying to enunciate everything.
Yeah. It's funny though. I mean, this is obviously was popularized back in the day. I'm sure that was probably not a lot of people were like this, but I'm sure there were copiers, right, of this, who wrote their own things, who read this kind of stuff. But this is just so not what is done today, right?
No, yeah, for sure. You might have like a sentence here or there that like leverages alliteration to like affect, whether it's like, oh, look at me, I'm a cool writer, look at all these P's, haha,
right.
or whatever. But this, like, throughout the entire 101 stanzas really hits home, like, this idea of alliterative text.
It's kind of impressive. I mean, it
is impressive.
It's a lot of, I'm sure it took a long time to sort of think out each line.
Yeah, and we talked about this a bit earlier in the translation where, there are certain words he uses that are used to fit the alliterative structure, or like it's not a breastplate, it's like this word that starts with a P.
Right.
We're like shoehorning in these things to keep it alive.
Right.
Or there's a couple moments in the text where I don't know if you noticed this, where instead of Gawain says this, it's like, and then unto him spoke these words that I am about to relate to you now.
Right.
And you're just like, okay,
we get it.
Yeah. It's, you're going for something and you're doing it. And sometimes there's a couple of moments where you're just like, okay.
Yeah, you're not going to hit every one.
Yeah.
But no, it's definitely cool.
So hopefully that was of interest and you've learned something today.
Yes, I hope so as well.
So
I certainly did not. But maybe the listener did.
You already knew those words.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Of course. So thank you for that little segment there from Eric. But now we're going to get into the movie and we're going to unpack the adaptation. So FYI, spoilers are coming up. So spoiler alert. We are going to dissect the adaptation, see how it relates to the original text, and try to figure out, why did David Lowery make some of these decisions? What was his motivation behind it, and sort of unpack it from there. So Eric, first question. How would you describe the adaptation? Literal, loose, or reimagined?
I would call this loose. I think there is a lot that is shared. Obviously, like the main thing being the beheading game. And then there's a shared moment on his quest from Camelot to the Green Chapel where he finds the Lord and Lady's castle and he sits there and they have another game that they play. Those two things exist in the movie and that's like the entire poem. So the fact that these are here, I think makes it at least loose. But around it, which we'll talk about in a second, like he adds some stuff that was pulled from other like sources.
Yes.
Arthurian sources. So I'm gonna grade this as loose.
I would agree.
So it's what you want, but it adds some stuff.
Yeah. It's not super loose. It's not reimagined. But it's relatively loose. It's not literal.
I agree.
Does that help?
Yeah.
So we're going to get into the differences. Number one, Gawain, or Gerwin, as they say it in the film, is not a knight in the movie, but he is a knight of the Round Table
in the poem.
So why make a decision like this that seems relatively not that important, but actually is important for the story? Why make a decision like this for the film?
So I want to harken back to when I was telling my wife what the poem was about, and she was like, I don't understand that. I think it's just like, it's not a modern idea that you would do something out of honor, like a tit for tat, like you behead me, I'll behead you in a year. That I think doesn't fully resonate. The motivations I think don't really make sense. Like the motivations are like, I have to upend my end of the bargain. And it's like, is that strong enough to carry a story with today's like audience, whether they be readers or viewers of a film? So for me, like the first decision that you have to make is it's not a story about, doing it because it's like they have to do it. I'm not going to like accept your beheading only for you to behead me later because I am a chivalrous knight of the Round Table. It's how do you make it realistic? And I think the answer to that is like to give Gawain extra motivation by making him not a knight, but keeping him Arthur's nephew. You sort of like put him around the table, but behind the table, so he's not part of it. And this is his opportunity to like step into knighthood. He wants to be a knight, and so that want is able, like, essentially like colors all of his actions.
Yeah.
Everything he does is in service of becoming a knight.
Yeah. And I you're just reminding me of the film where, we're watching, I think it's one of the first scenes where he is either drunk off his ass or very hungover, or maybe still drunk from the night before, and he's walking around, he's like, I still have time to be a knight. I still have time. Like, I can still enjoy myself. And then you see later on, he's at the Round Table, and he's actually invited up to sit next to the king and queen, and he doesn't think he's worthy, and the king asks him, tell me a tale, and he has no tales to tell because he's never done anything of honor. So it's that sort of propels his, like you said, motivation into becoming this knight.
Yeah. And when the Green Knight walks in and says, somebody challenge me, and everyone kind of demurs, then he's like, yes, I will challenge you. I will. This is my tale now.
Yeah.
I'm taking over.
Right. It's my turn.
Yeah.
So yes, that is one difference. So Gawain is not a knight, and he's given that extra motivation to become one later on. And like we just alluded to before, the Green Knight shows up to the round table, and he basically challenges all of the knights to a beheading game. So it exists in both, but for the reasons, for reasons it has changed for each text or each medium. Excuse me.
Yeah, I think it's probably tied to giving, like, not allowing Gawain to be a knight in the movie, where the motivations for him is to prove himself, and so, okay, I'm a guy that wants to prove myself. The narrative is then going to put in place for me the challenge.
Yeah.
So I want to be a Jedi. Like, all right, here's Yoda. Now go be a Jedi.
Right.
And it's going to be hard to be a Jedi. It's going to be hard to become a knight. But, wow, I'm really hitting Star Wars today. But it's, like, I think good narratives will put in front of you the thing that you want to leverage to become the thing you want to be. And it's up to him to follow through on that. But it's giving him the chance.
Yeah, and I think from Gawain's perspective in the poem, when he sort of receives this challenge, he's sort of thinking, I have to accept this challenge in order to keep my status and keep my honor as a knight. This is what a knight is expected to do. So I need to keep this I need to accept it in order to keep this sort of standing and reputation in the round table. But in the movie, it's sort of like, I need to achieve that status. I need to achieve.
He's to elevate.
Yeah, because he's not there yet.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I do think in the poem, this is like somewhat familiar, that he might be younger. He might be a younger knight, member of the Round Table.
I think so.
And so he does, at some like level, have something to prove there as well.
He's certainly more immature.
Yeah, but ultimately, I think you're right. The poem is much more about honor and just like following through on your end of the bargain than it is like wanting to leverage that opportunity for something, for betterment.
Right. And then on Gawain's quest, he runs into two new things. So the robbers in the woods, right? And then Winifred's house in the lake. And I would also argue the giants, but we can get to that later. But these are the two main things. Yeah,
so the story really is pretty simple. The Green Knight comes in, Gawain cuts his head off, and in a year, he quests back out to find the Green Knight to get the return blow. In the story, he immediately finds the Lord and Lady's castle in the poem. Excuse me. In this movie, he doesn't know which way to go, and at first he runs into this kid who is just in this like charred battlefield, and tells him to follow the river and through the woods to Grandma's house. You'll go and find the Green Chapel, and he does. And when he goes in there, he's immediately ambushed by two other kids with the first kid, and they steal his horse. They tie him up. They steal the axe that he was carrying from the Green Knight, and they really derail like the beginnings of his quest.
His first challenge.
Yeah, it is. So I think the addition of that, that one in particular, I think is a little more literal than the Winifred or the giants that come later. But that one is really just like, how can we? He's got a big fucking axe. He's got a horse. This is going to be easy, right?
Right.
He can just find the Green Chapel in like 3 days.
Yeah.
How do I make his search hard? I get him off the horse. I like leave him vulnerable to all manner of attackers. Doesn't matter that he has like armor or a big weapon if I get rid of those armor and big weapons.
Right.
While also, I think you mentioned that that's an Arthurian tale, like him getting robbed in the woods by some just like robber folks.
Yeah.
So we're keeping it in the Arthurian cinematic universe, but we're just we're making it a challenge.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, it's clever. It's a clever nod to a different tale, right? If you are a scholar, or if you are
the real Arthurian heads,
exactly
get a kick out of this.
Yeah, they would love that. It's not just some random thing that David Lowery just spawned from his mind, right? It's something that exists in this, like you said, universe. Maybe there should be. Maybe this should be A24's, competitor to the MCU.
That would be.
What would it be?
That would be sick.
KAU, King Arthur universe.
Yeah.
Cow
Cow.
for the cow heads.
I like it. I'm in on it.
Okay. Well, we'll email A24 and see if we can get that going.
Yeah.
But then the second one, Winifred's house in the lake.
Yeah, this one is excuse me, definitely less literal. In his quest, he comes across just like a rundown cabin in the woods, and he's tired. He's wet, right? I think it's been raining.
Yeah, he's been walking instead of his horse.
Yeah.
Right.
He needs shelter. So
Yeah.
he goes to this cabin. It seems to be deserted. He falls asleep in the bed, and he wakes up with this woman standing over him,
Mm-hmm.
and basically like, "You're in my bed, get out." They talk for a little bit, and she's like, "Actually, can you help me find my head? It's in the lake outside."
He's like, "What the fuck are you
Yeah,
talking
so
about?"
no, your head's on your neck.
Shoulders, yeah.
Whatever. He goes into the lake, like swims deep in there, finds a skull, comes back out. She's gone. She's a skeleton in the bed he was just sleeping in. Puts the skull back on, and then his axe that's been stolen, like essentially re-enters.
Yeah, it's just hanging against the pole, I think, in the room.
Yeah. So this one I have less good of a read on. It seems sort of like a side quest on your main quest to get your axe back in a certain way. This one also comes from like Arthurian tales.
Yeah.
But like I don't fully get it.
I think from what I took from it, it's another test to prove his honor. So like he doesn't really owe anything to this woman, and she's essentially a ghost, right? She's not a real person. She's dead, and it sort of proves his resolve to be honorable, right? He sort of dives into this lake in the middle of the night, or spring, or pond, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it's a very cool scene, actually, visually, if you ever watch it, where he dives really deep, and they have really cool colors of like red and other things. But he dives all the way to the bottom of this thing, which is pretty deep, and grabs the skull, dives all the way back up, and she's gone. But he sort of respects her life by, sort of restoring her head on her skeleton in the bed. So it's sort of, the way I read it is sort of like it's honorable to sort of respect the dead and go to this great length to just replace a head, which
let her rest.
Let her rest, yeah. So
that is interesting now that you say that, because there is that moment where he's about to dive in, and he's like, "If I do this for you, what will you do for me?" And then she's like, "That's not how this works."
Yeah, why would you ask something like that?
Yeah, why would you ask something like that? Which is, I think, to your point, like he almost fails.
Yeah.
Because he does want something out of that, and
He
she's
does.
like, "No," and he's like, "Yeah, you're right."
He's a capitalist at heart, or at first at least. Right?
Yeah.
He's like, what are you gonna do for me? Kind of thing.
Exactly.
But I think it's sort of this is sort of a side note, but I think there's like a greater power at work in this movie that's sort of like rewarding him for these honorable acts. So like after completing this side quest where he like restores her skull to her body in the bed, he's rewarded with his axe, right? That was stolen from him from the robbers earlier in the day.
Yeah.
So, side note.
Yeah.
But
and there's a couple moments where he runs into a fox in a cave while it's pouring rain outside, and he needs some shelter, and the fox continues to follow him. There's a moment where he runs into this giant like traveling group of giants, and they
great scene.
They go to like pick him up, and the fox like barks at them, and they stop and continue on.
I think it was a howl. He like howled
Howls
at
at
them,
them.
and they sort of howl back, which was weird.
Yeah. I think another viewing might unpack some things in this movie. There's a lot going on.
I love this scene, by the way. It just it was very sci-fi.
Yeah.
It just, I don't know, something about it was just like alien.
It felt like Arrival to me for some reason.
Yeah, it did. Yes.
Yeah.
Me as well. So I just think David Lowery should only do sci-fi from now on, or he should at least dip his toes in it.
Yeah.
Because that was a cool visual. But I don't know if the giants were. I'm sure there's probably an Arthurian legend about giants.
I would assume so.
Yeah, I didn't research that, but anyways, let's move on to Morgan Le Fay.
Yes.
Who is she?
So Morgan Le Fay is the half sister of King Arthur.
Yes.
And in the poem, she is the sort of mastermind behind everything that happens.
Mm-hmm.
The Green Knight is also the like lord of the castle that they run into, and Morgan Le Fay is the old person living in that castle who sort of just like created a game to try and scare Arthur's wife Guinevere into like dying, basically.
Yeah, which is an elaborate scheme.
Yeah, she's like, I brought the Green Knight in to make her like have a heart attack, basically, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or threaten her life in some way.
Yeah. So that's her motivation, but she's really not. She's sort of like the architect. She is like she's playing. She's playing the keys. The what do you call that?
The puppet.
Yeah, she's like the puppet master.
Yeah.
In a certain sense, in the film, she is like brought forward. She is, Gawain's mother.
Yeah.
So it makes Gawain, Arthur's nephew.
Mm-hmm.
And I think makes the like familial stakes a little bit stronger.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than have her play the puppet master only, she is both puppet master and like direct mother to Gawain. So our read on this is that she knows that her son is like not quite knight worthy yet, and so she creates the like projection of the Green Knight to get him over the hump.
And yes, agreed. And before we get into it, I actually wanted to ask you. So in the poem, it's sort of revealed at the end of the poem that she is the architect. But in the movie, it's sort of revealed at the beginning.
Yes.
That she's sort of bringing the Green Knight to the Round Table through magic. And so, like, I want to ask you, what is the point of doing it at the beginning as opposed to revealing it at the end for this specific purpose?
I guess you're just removing the twist of it, right? Like, it's not... It's less important what she's doing, or it's less important like who's doing it than like what she's doing.
Right.
So I don't think they like out and out say that she's Morgan Le Fay. I think it's like you can intuit that pretty easily from her relationship to Arthur. But I think it's more just like we know. It might be for the audience, right? Like we know who's doing this,
right?
And so you're not questioning what is this? Who's this Green Knight fella?
Right.
You take him to be like a real thing, a real challenge that Gawain has to face,
right? Rather
than like, is he real? Is he just like a tree man? What's going on?
Yeah, I
think it just grounds the story, and I think it answers some questions for you.
Yeah,
it makes things a little bit cleaner.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but yeah, so that is one key difference. The motivation behind Morgan Le Fay's architecture of the story.
Yeah.
Architect role in the story, I guess you could say, which was interesting for sure. And then, so the big thing, do you want to get into it? The ending. So if you really don't want to be spoiled, yeah, please stop your listening.
You can stop listening now. We've done enough for you.
Right.
We've given you all this content.
Go watch The Green Knight. Go read it.
Yeah.
If you haven't already.
So in the poem, he finds the knight. Well, I guess we should back up for a second. So in his quest, he runs into a castle with a lord and a lady.
Yeah, oh yes.
He makes an agreement with the lord, another game, where the lord every day will go off and hunt, and whatever he brings back will be Gawain's, and whatever Gawain gets that day while he's chilling at the house will become the lord's.
Right.
And
which is very weird.
The first 2 days, the lord gives him back his kill. The first day, I think it's a deer. Second day, it's a boar. And Gawain gets like smooches from the lady each of the first 2 days.
Yeah.
She's coming on to him, basically.
Yeah.
And he kisses the lord in return.
Mm-hmm.
And on the third day, he gets kissed again, but he also gets a girdle, which is this belt, and he's told that it's going to like protect him from the Green Knight, what comes next. But instead of giving that to the lord, the way the agreement is constructed, he just keeps it for himself.
Right.
So when he goes ultimately to the Green Knight swings at him twice and misses, and then Gawain's like, "What's up? Why aren't you like hitting me?"
Right.
And he's like, "Oh yeah, you're right. I am like the Lord, and you did not give me that girdle, so you weren't being entirely truthful." And he like nicks him on the neck once, and he's like, "Now you're done.
Right.
Like our bargain's been paid off. Just know I could have beheaded you, but like, you know, you showed to me in my house with my wife that you were honorable enough, and I understand that you kept the girdle because you wanted to protect your life, not because you were being like dishonorable and not sharing it with me."
Right.
So, and then he goes back to Camelot, and he's like, Arthur, I'm kind of embarrassed, but I did it.
Yeah.
Whatever.
And they sort of accept him, and they all wear this green, not sash, girdle, sorry, as a sort of reminder to always be honest.
Yes.
And truthful.
Yeah. So nice little tidy moral there.
Yeah.
In the film, things are a bit different. The situation at the castle is the same, although it's a little bit more graphic, and it's like sexual details.
Yeah. Yes.
Slightly more graphic.
Mm-hmm.
But when he goes to the Green Knight, eventually, the Green Knight swings at him twice. He flinches both times. On the third swing, he flinches again, gets up, runs away.
Yeah.
He gets on his horse, gets on his boat, goes back to Camelot, tells the tale that he did the deed.
Right.
The Green Knight was done. He becomes king. He rules. His girl that he kept in the whorehouse, I guess, Essel. She bears him a son, and then he gets rid of her.
We must give her more credit than that. She is. They are the love interests in the movie.
Yes,
but she is still. She, I guess, works in a whorehouse or lives in a whorehouse or has some sort of association. We're not entirely clear.
That's true. Thank you.
Just to give her some credit.
Thank you for clearing that up. The son eventually dies in battle. He marries a new, higher stationed wife.
Mm-hmm.
People don't really respect him, and it, is shown that he and her are the castle is being ransacked.
Yeah.
It's falling apart.
Barbarians
are at the gates.
I don't know if you did. I don't know if I just missed this, but did you mention that he took away her son, their child? So she was pregnant with his baby, Essel.
Yeah, I assumed that was the kid that died. My assumption was that he actually raised that kid in the castle himself.
Must have been, maybe. Yeah. Okay.
That was my thought.
Gotcha.
That's not entirely clear. So once he is,
he becomes.
We wanted to do this tightly, and
we just sort of
I can't do anything.
Sorry,
I can't do anything.
But anyways, he becomes sort of a reviled king because he goes to war, and his son dies, and I think there's a scene where somebody throws something at him in the castle.
Yes.
One of the lower people.
Like an egg or cabbage or whatever.
Something. And he's being shouted at and stuff like that. So he sort of becomes this failure as a king. And I think one of the last scenes is where the castle's being stormed.
Yes.
And he's with his family in whatever room.
The chamber room or
sort of awaiting death.
Yeah. And he comes to back in the Green Castle as young Dev Patel and realizes, I suppose the interpretation is what his future will bring him when he fails this end of the bargain to not take the final axe blow. And so he takes off the girdle, throws it aside, and the Green Knight says off with your head.
He says I'm ready, and
he says I'm ready, and then he says off with your head, then whatever. And then it cuts to black.
Right.
That's the end of the movie.
Right.
So my interpretation of that is David Lowery trying to say something more than what's being said in the poem, or different than what's being said in the poem.
How so?
Oh, I think it's a trickle-down effect from changing the motivation of his going to the Green Knight anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So in the poem, it's just a tit for tat. It's the honorable thing to do, and it turns out in a twist that they're just playing a game on him.
Right.
This reality in the film, it's not a game. Although Arthur's at some point, it's just a game, lad. Don't worry about it. But then that's never talked about again.
Mm-hmm.
The film reads as more real.
Yeah.
Where that axe blow is actually going to kill him.
Right.
And ultimately, I think he realizes if he wants to be the knight
he was meant to be,
that he was meant to be, the actual honorable, chivalrous, loyal, good, true, memorable knight, he has to take the axe blow.
Yeah.
Failing that is a bullshit life.
Yeah.
It's an untrue life.
It's built on a lie.
Yes. And when that is built on a lie, you can see that everything that he creates and he rules that's built on a lie will crumble.
Yeah, eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he decides to take the axe blow in a show of here's what it actually means to be a knight. You sort of just wanted to have the title and the lands and be the cool king or whatever, but that's ultimately not what being a knight is. That's not what being a good person is.
Yeah, correct. And I think this is another sort of is more evidence to show that there is a higher power at play here, because he basically, from our view, right, watching the movie, it looks like he just leaves, and we're given this sort of like, okay, this is how his life sort of turns out, but it's not that, and he's shown that, and sort of he comes to that realization through whatever higher power is being at play here in this like sort of magic world. Maybe it's sort of the magic that is related to his mother. Maybe it's similar to that. I'm not really sure, but sort of shows him, like you just said, this is not the path that you want to go down.
Yeah, I think it's piggybacking on what you're saying. I think it's important to note that like the fantasy or science fiction elements here aren't necessarily like spelled out. We don't exactly know the rules of like how the Green Knight operates in this world.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he just lives in a chapel far, far away from Camelot.
Right.
We don't understand exactly like how he survived the axe blow, or like what his blow will do to Dev Patel's neck.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it exists.
Yeah.
And that is sort of just enough in the rules of this movie.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I agree. Those are the main differences. Is there anything else you want to say, comment about them?
No, I don't think so. I think we'll touch on another point when we talk about our hot takes.
Yes.
But I don't know. Did you find this to be successful?
I did. I wasn't so sure about it when I first left the theater, because I was still wrapping my mind around everything that I just saw. But I absolutely think it was a successful adaptation, sort of a reimagining in a way. Of that tale, but sort of...
I mean, a looser
reimagining, excuse me, yes. It's sort of just evolving from the original text, which is sort of what you want, right? If you're making an adaptation, you can just make a literal one if it's worth it, right? If it's everything is spelled out for you, but if it's not, you sort of have to fill in the gaps and add more to it, and I think it was done successfully. What did you think?
I totally agree. I think we mentioned this, like the impulse to just make this a action movie is probably really high.
Yeah.
And in another director or writer or studio's hands, that might be what this becomes. But I think leaving it as a smaller, character-driven, idea-driven, personal growth-driven movie makes it a true interpretation of Sir Gawain.
Yeah, and I was actually listening to a podcast, or maybe it was just an interview with David Lowery earlier today or yesterday, and he was saying that, at a different studio, different from A24, this could have been a totally different story and a totally different movie. But he said he sort of really wanted A24 to pick it up secretly, and eventually they did. I think it was either before Sundance or at Sundance. He said it was sort of a match made in heaven kind of thing. So
yeah, the Universal rep is like, hey, I like this movie. What if there's an army?
Yeah, right.
What if we give you $60 million more?
Yeah. All these extras.
Let's blow it out.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Which sort of makes sense. I mean, A24 is sort of this new studio that has this perception around them of being character driven and really telling unique and different stories.
More adult driven
dramas and and told in interesting ways.
Yeah, even though this is a fantasy quote unquote movie, it's I think more approachable as a traditional adult movie.
What did you think the Landon kids thought of it? The 13, 14-year-olds who were sitting next to us.
So I think that they were probably super surprised.
You really?
I personally think that the marketing sort of misleads you.
Definitely.
In this movie, where you think it's going to be
this epic.
Yeah, and it's really not that.
Yeah.
It is. It's not slow, but it is a personal burn.
Yeah.
Personal journey.
There are epic moments to it, but it's not
for sure.
I think it is misleading in a way.
Yeah. So I think those Landon kids probably got misled.
Yeah, fuck them.
I doubt they read the source material.
I also doubt that.
Yeah.
So did you like it?
I liked it quite a bit.
Yeah.
I think I want to watch it again because I feel like I missed some stuff, even though I tried to take note of everything. But there's just a lot there's just a lot there, and it all means something
Mm-hmm.
rather than just like advancing the plot. I think
Yeah.
there's like a reason why there's these giants just walking through the hills of,
Yeah.
northern Wales.
Yeah. And so so at first I did not really like it. Because I was misled. I was expecting this big epic sort of thing, and I didn't. So there was a cognitive dissonance after the movie that I was like, I'm not really sure how I feel because it didn't align with what I thought.
Yeah.
And so I had to sort of stew on it a while. And in order to do this podcast, we read the source material, we watch the movie, and then we do research in order to prep for the podcast. And I think that's a kind of a healthy way to sort of like think about a story, right? Think about dissecting an adaptation, right? It's a lot of work, but it sort of gives you all these different perspectives. And for me, sort of as that process played out, I sort of learned more about it. And now I'm much more appreciative of the movie and the story in general. But like you just said, I'm much more excited now to watch it again.
Yeah.
With everything that we've talked about and learned throughout that process.
Yeah.
So,
Well said.
thank you. So, hot takes. Eric, would you like to go first?
I'll go first. So my hot take here is that this is all just a metaphor for climate change. I think that the Green Knight himself is just like a natural wonder who comes into Camelot and says like, "Hey, I'm just like the metaphor of nature.
Mm-hmm.
Let's have a symbiotic relationship."
Yeah.
And they're like, "You know what? No, fuck you. I'm gonna cut you off at your head.
Yeah.
And I'm just gonna use you for like your purpose.
Mm-hmm.
My purpose being to leverage my station in life, but I'm gonna disregard your power as a natural being." And then I think ultimately he realizes that like he's never gonna win against the natural world.
Yeah.
There's a lot of the idea with climate change is that like humans have furthered the world on a path towards like our own destruction.
Mm-hmm.
So I read this, it's in some journal, and I thought it was really good, but it's like in the short term, like the climate of our earth is like in trouble, but in the long term, like it's good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you think about humans as a virus on like a body, once you get rid of the virus, you're going to be fine.
Right. You will heal.
So what is climate change but just like attacking the virus?
Yeah. It's killing us.
Yeah.
Mother Nature is evolving to, or it's sort of not really even evolving, it's just running its normal course of action
Yeah.
to sort of get rid of.
The people that are making it hard for it to exist.
Right.
So
Which is us.
I think in this movie, Dev Patel sort of reckons with that. Like he's, face to face with the Green Knight, and like there's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
And ultimately you can like run away from what you think the reality is, or you can embrace it and just have it consume you.
Wow, that's kind of a dark.
I think this movie is super nihilist.
Interesting. Yeah, you said that right after
Yeah.
we saw it outside, and I didn't really understand what you said.
Yeah.
I was like, nihilist? What the fuck are you talking about?
There you go. I think it's
Wow.
it's a pessimistic
God.
it's a pessimistic time, Will.
Now I'm really sad.
I think it's time art reflects how some people are feeling, which is not good.
Yeah, that's true. I would honestly love to get, because I dig that hot take. That might be one of your hottest takes yet.
Thank you.
I would love to get David Lowery on the podcast, and I would love to have you
Just talk
tell him
about
that and see what he thinks. Because that would be incredibly, if that was actually his sort of
reason for making it.
yeah, that'd be incredible. It'd be very genius, I think. But
We'll get him on the pod.
Yeah, we'll get him on. We'll send him an email. David Lowery, come on the pod. We
Yeah.
love you. My hot take will not live up to that, but my hot take is it's a Morgan Le Fay's world. We're all just living in it.
Can I ask you a question? Did you find reading this poem that you were, and this is for only a certain audience might get this reference, did you feel like the weight of Avalon like on your shoulders, where it was like at the very end, like, guess what? I'm Merlin.
Unlike one of our friends who has a difficult time with that game, I don't feel the weight of Avalon anymore. I've sort of evolved and sort of graduated to a new level of being, I think, where I am not affected by the weight of that game. So
Great. That was a hot take sponsored by Wendy's. 4-piece chicken nuggets for 99 cents.
Just for the audience members who have no fucking clue what we're talking about, that's targeted at one individual who is a new listener, actually.
Yeah.
Hopefully he listens to this one.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it'll be for naught.
We'll recommend it to him. There's a board game called Avalon. You should search it out. It's a fun way to have your friendships dissolve.
Yeah, correct. That is correct. So, Eric, movie or poem?
I'm going movie here. Probably not a surprise based on some of our conversation about the accessibility of the read here. But nonetheless, I thought the movie was really good.
I am in total agreement. I mean, I certainly gained a lot, I think, from the poem. Relearned what alliteration was, because I'd obviously forgotten since 10th grade English.
Yeah.
And a bobbin wheel. So I feel like I learned some new things. Thank you for that.
Yeah. You probably never encounter a bobbin wheel again, but
You're correct.
we'll always have these 60 pages.
It's a good bet.
Yeah.
But I think the movie just,
Yeah.
did a lot for me. So, and then final thoughts. What will we remember from the poem? For me, the rhythm of the prose. That just stuck out to me.
Totally agree with that. I think that's the big takeaway for me is just the construction of it.
Yeah.
It goes for it, and I think it does it pretty effectively. And I think you have to give the writer, the poet, or J.R.R. Tolkien credit.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
you have to.
Gawain, J.R.R.
Gawain.
Tolkien. Yeah,
Gawain.
they really went for it, and I think it's impressive.
Yeah,
It's a nice story, but it's also like really, really well constructed.
Yeah.
So
well thought out.
Yeah.
And then, did you have any final thoughts on
the movie? Yes, I would like to talk about Dev Patel's look.
Oh,
like
okay.
I was thinking when I was watching it that that's sort of like the look you would like, the leonine mane of hair with like his beard is not like the best beard in the world, but it's pretty good.
It's pretty good.
It's like fairly filled. It's not like having that great head of hair with like a patchy beard.
I think it works for his character because his character is immature and I think pretty young, and so you wouldn't want like a full beard on right. You don't want him to be too old or mature looking.
I mean like the thickness, like it doesn't quite grow everywhere.
Right. It's it's not. I wouldn't say it's patchy, but it's symmetrical.
Yeah.
But it doesn't grow. Yeah.
My question to you is: would you want to look like that?
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Well, obviously, besides being like that, but you with that facial and head of hair.
Yes, I think.
Obviously, Dev Patel is like a very handsome man.
Yeah.
Anyone would want to be Dev Patel.
Correct, and I do think it does look better with a full beard with those locks, those lovely locks of his, just on anybody in general.
Yeah,
I think you want the beard, mane combo.
I like this era of long hair Dev Patel, like that movie Lion.
Yeah,
that movie was really good.
Great. Did he have a beard in that? I can't remember.
No, he just had long hair, I think.
Okay,
that's when I first realized, like, holy shit.
Yeah, he's a man now.
Yeah.
Yeah, remember from Slumdog Millionaire? He was just this little boy.
Yeah, well, that was 15.
Yeah, that was a while.
Oh, like 13 years ago.
09?
08.
08, okay.
Yeah.
Wow, good memory.
Best picture 08.
And then I wanted to shout out the Giants real quick. I already mentioned this earlier in the podcast. I just thought that was a fucking cool scene. Whoever the CGI guy is, give that guy a raise. It was just...
those are real giants.
Shut up. No, you're lying.
They're in Wales.
You're lying.
No one's been to Wales, so they don't know. That's where the Giants are.
Gotta get a ticket and go see them. So those are our final thoughts. Thanks for listening if you've gotten this far. And we don't blame you if you haven't. You just shut us off like 20, 30 minutes ago.
Oh, no, don't say that.
But we appreciate you listening. And as we sign off here, we want to mention to check out our most recent episode of On the Road, which was an adaptation of the Jack Kerouac novel, which was our most previous one. And then keep an eye out for our next episode on Howl. The plan to record that in 2 weeks' time, because Eric's going on vacation again.
Yeah.
It's the summer of Eric. I think that's what it is.
Every summer is the summer of Eric.
But we're going to do that in hopefully 2 weeks. And then you'll see some more beat novels coming out.
Yeah. This was a bit of a one-off, as this movie we thought was going to be, capturing the conversation came out. I think it has a little bit.
Yeah.
So and we were interested in it.
Yeah, for sure.
So we broke apart our beat scene a little bit to our beat season a little bit to hit the Green Knight, but then we're back on the beats, baby.
Back on the beats.
You like that alliteration? You're welcome.
You're welcome. Any shout outs?
Dev Patel. Just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, correct.
I like Dev Patel a lot.
I would like to shout out.
I'm gonna add Dev Patel in our fantasy league. Actually.
Ooh, you can't. He's gonna win the Oscar this year, so.
Yeah, I know. He's gonna be hot. He's gonna be a hot ticket.
I would like to shout out David Lowery, obviously, but I would also like to make a personal shout out to Alicia Vikander for coming back strong, because she had a few years of sort of downward popularity, I guess is the way to say it. Downward heat. What did they say in Entourage? It's like your
Yeah, you don't come to Sundance for the
what is it? You don't come to Sundance for the somebody. You come for the heat. Yeah, what is that?
Yeah.
What is that line? We'll get
it right.
Yeah, we'll get it right next time.
We'll just dub this in.
Yeah. But I'd like to shout out to her for coming back.
Yeah, we didn't really talk about her, but she was really good in this movie.
Yeah. I mean, she played two different characters.
Yep, Essel and then the Lady of the Castle.
Yeah, she was good.
She was good. I look forward to more movies with her.
Yeah, well, I think she's coming out with another one this year. So
I don't think so.
But anyways, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Peace out.